Good afternoon to you. Mark Southeth, HurricaneTrack.com here with your hurricane outlook and discussion for the 29th of June, 2017. Let's take a look at what's happening out there. This is the visible satellite animation of a good deal of the Atlantic Basin this afternoon. And a few things to point out. Tropical wave moving through the eastern Caribbean. It brought some heavy rain and some squally conditions, as I talked about that it would a few days ago, moving out of the eastern Atlantic into this region. And now it is spreading that shower and thunderstorm activity off into portions of the eastern Caribbean, up through areas, Puerto Rico, U.S. British Virgin Islands. But you notice that it's getting stretched. Upper level winds pretty strong through this area. And overall convection is very limited out in the deep tropics right now. So if you have plans to visit the windwards or the leewards, and even the greater Antilles once this moves through this tropical wave feature, everything is going to be fine and dandy. We don't have any other well-organized tropical waves moving through the region. So if you have plans down into the southeast Caribbean, you'll be just fine. Meanwhile, up along the northern Gulf Coast, as if you needed any more rain, yet there it is. Just, sort of a surface trough up here, unstable atmosphere overall, moisture streaming off of the Gulf of Mexico, and you can even see that and some of these little cloud streaks in here moving from south-southeast to north-northwest. And we have this very strong Bermuda high with its clockwise rotation just funneling that moisture up into the Gulf of Mexico, and it converges here over that weak frontal system, sort of washed out front, call it a surface trough. And you can see some evidence of that through here, and that's the focal point of these showers and thunderstorms, some of them very heavy, and you really don't need that down there. You don't need me to tell you that, but I'm telling you anyway. In the eastern Pacific, this is so cool. I love cool stuff like this. The leftover skeleton of Dora in the Pacific. And look, it even still has a well-developed, almost like an eye right there. That's amazing. Let's zoom in on that. Let's see. Here we go. Come on, if this will work. Now I'm going to move over. Check it out. That's just so cool. Oh, man, I'd give anything to be able to get out there with like one of our weather balloons and the GoPros that are on it and just launch it in that, because you'd really be able to see the circulation and literally the bones of the system. The low-level swirl is all that is left. Why is that? Well, all of this colder water temperature in here, we're going to look at that in a moment on the anomalies map, but all of that led to the demise of Dora, and so you folks in the Baja were safe from this. It may be hard until maybe September to really hit the Baja with a hurricane this year, and I'll show you why. You never say never, but water temperatures out that way colder than normal. So what's happening? Well, the upward motion chart here, this shows us a lot of this sort of brownish color in the western hemisphere. Downward motion, sinking motion in the atmosphere, not good for development. Upward motion over Africa and parts of the Indian Ocean and the maritime continent regions. Yet we still haven't seen a typhoon out in the western Pacific, which is very unusual. And Dora in the eastern Pacific, very short-lived hurricane. Things are pretty slow globally. And even over the next 15 days, for the most part, especially in the Atlantic Basin, we see this sort of brown color. Africa stays busy with some upward motion with the green there, and these tropical waves will come off and move westward, and maybe they'll develop somewhere in the eastern Pacific. But July, I got to tell you, obviously we're heading into July. It's typically a pretty slow month. You get these big Saharan air layer outbreaks. July, in fact, on Monday, calm down here. I get excited about this stuff because, it's interesting. On Monday, I'm going to show you the latest climatology chart. The map that shows, or the graph. I have to think here, and it's hard sometimes when I've got so much to say. The peak of the season graph. You remember, you've seen it before, where it shows the rise up to September 10th and then the drop off. And I'm going to show you in there, if you look at it, we'll zoom in on it, that July, there's a few days in there that looks like it's almost as inactive as parts of May or June, believe it or not. And the reason that is, and this is to my point, you get these giant dust outbreaks coming off Africa The pressures are usually the highest in July, and then boom, once we get to mid to late August, the lid comes off, the pressure pattern changes, and it's off to the races usually, especially in an active season like we're probably going to have this year. So that was the GFS. This is in 15-day. This is the CFS, Climate Forecast System, 40-day forecast. And, it shows very similar conditions, sinking motion across most of the Western Hemisphere in the current time frame. And as we go out and slide down, if you look here, Climate Forecast System indicating the possibility from days 15 through 25 here of development chances increasing in the Atlantic Basin as the Pacific becomes more inactive, well, in terms of the MJO anyway. So the bottom line is, for the next couple of weeks, things should be pretty much where they should be. Does that make sense? That, climatologically speaking, it's slow, and I think it's going to be slow as we get into July. Now, the updated sea surface temperatures anomaly chart from the NOAA site here came out just a little while ago, and I have to tell you, that is absolutely remarkable. I mean, we've been looking at this for those that have been watching all the way back to the winter months and seeing how this has evolved. The heat here, if you want to call it that, the warmest water really focused now in the main development region, very, very warm off the Iberian Peninsula. And on Monday, when this updates again, I'm going to show you what it looked like back in 2013 as an example. And no cheating, don't go look it up yourselves. I know you will, because, you have to, right? But I'm going to show you what it looked like back then and how the collapse of the warm AMO signal that year, the Atlantic Multi-Decadal Oscillation, fancy way of saying, an active period of Atlantic hurricane activity for one. There's more to it than that. But it really started to come down once we got into July and beyond in 2013, and I'll show you that. And we are obviously well ahead of that. Very, very warm compared to average in the eastern Atlantic, and also very, very warm with Bermuda right there in the middle. I don't know what that means for later in the year, but boy, Bermuda is sitting right in the middle of some very warm sea surface temperature anomalies in the Sargasso Sea area. I don't know if Bermuda is in the Sargasso Sea. You would think, being a geography degree holder, I would know that, but I don't know everything, so I'm going to look that one up. It's in the Atlantic, not quite in the middle of the Atlantic, but you get the idea. It's out here by itself, surrounded by all that very warm water. I've been there a couple of times, once for a hurricane and once for some research on that hurricane 6 months later. Story for another day. But boy, that's very, very warm compared to average. And then look, Gulf of Mexico is still running below normal for the most part. And we'll look at some actual sea surface temperatures there. This will rebound, but with all that rain, maybe it won't. But don't let that fool you, as I'll show you in a few minutes. Water temperature is still plenty warm enough for hurricanes to develop. Any signs of El Nino out here? Nope, not yet. The SOI is negative on all scales or indices, if you will. The current, the 30, the 90-day, they're all down there. So the pressure pattern's trying to reverse to build warmth across the equatorial Pacific, but, and there's always a but, right? The subsurface not really cooperating. We'll get to that in just a moment. I want to broaden this out, though, and show you the wider shot. And you can really see there's no overwhelming signal in the tropical Pacific of any major abnormal warmth. And like I said, it's sort of, not even sort of. Again, it really is positively warm neutral across pretty much the entire length of the equatorial Pacific there. And then you can really get the idea of how big this warm area is in the eastern Atlantic. Colder water focused up to the north, still very cold relative to average off the Baja and Mexico here. Everything's pretty much holding where it, we've seen it over the last several weeks. Now, as I alluded to, the subsurface chart updating recently on the 22nd of June. And while we do have some positive anomalies up here, a half a degree to 2 degrees in some areas Celsius, it's still not dominating, and you still have these other little islands of cold showing up. And these are just waxing and waning. They come and go. No major warmth building out on the western Pacific. And with the SOI as negative as it has been, I would expect if we were going to see an El Nino, and it's pretty much too late now, probably 90% too late to even affect this season, maybe more than that. But I would expect this to really start getting warmer and expanding eastward over time, and it's not. So we'll get a new one of these maps probably by Monday as well, and we'll put it into motion. This is a GIF animation, and I'll show you what it looks like as we go on through the end of July, or the end of June, to start July with the next update. As I talked about, water temperatures in the Gulf rebounding from when Cindy went through. Let me just show you this. This is cool. So this is today, or yesterday is when it was updated, the 28th. It's always a day behind. And this is what it was like on the 23rd. So there's the 23rd, and you can see all that heavy rain and the southerly flow from Cindy really churned up the Gulf here. Water temperatures dipped to between 26 and 27 Celsius, or 80, 81 degrees at the most Fahrenheit. And then recently, 23rd of June, yesterday. See that? It's definitely coming back. 23rd, yesterday. And you also notice that we're getting some very warm anomalies. Boy, my brain it's got to slow down. These 29 Celsius isotherms showing up through the Yucatan Channel and into the southern Gulf there, the south central Gulf. Very warm over here in the Bay of Campeche. And this is where your anomalies is all around the periphery. It's up here in the middle in the northern Gulf where things are below normal. But I'm telling you, wait till we see this as an example on August 15th. All right, the first day of what we typically refer to as the start of the real hurricane season. I mean, unless we get a hurricane through there first to churn it up even more, this water temperature profile will definitely warm up and be, where it can produce some pretty bad hurricanes. So don't let that fool you. Off the East Coast, if you are up in the Northeast, Cape Cod area, still too cold for my liking. Getting warmer down closer to the Jersey Shore, certainly along the Chesapeake Bay, Delaware Bay, not too bad. And then from the Carolinas on south, definite beach weather, swimming weather, surf weather, whatever. Water temperatures in the low to almost mid-80s. In some cases, low 80s. That surf temperature is, they can fluctuate right along the beach, especially when you get these big tide pools and then a tide change and then inlets and whatever. But the larger scale, water temperatures warm enough to get out there without the old wetsuit. So that's always good. I went to the beach yesterday with my family, and it was fantastic. Looking at the upper ocean heat content, this is what it looks like today. Check out what I thought I would just compare. I always like looking to see where we've come from. This is what it was a year ago. And notice the difference there in the Gulf, 2017, 2016, same day. So, or roughly. And, so the Gulf, it's not necessarily cold, right? Because it's still 80 plus degrees Fahrenheit. But you can see there was more upper ocean heat content, more energy in the upper part of the ocean last year than there is this year. But it's interesting because this year, there's a little bit more of that TCHP going on off the southeast coast compared to last year. See that? A little bit ahead of where we were last year. Nothing to be concerned with on any of these. It's just interesting to watch and see how this evolves. And then lastly, we're going to go in here and check out the GFS over the next 5 days. Keep your eyes off the coast of Africa here for any spins, any vorticity signatures. There's a few curly cues that come off and the wind flags here, the wind barbs. But with that non-enhanced version of the MJO coming through the downward phase, really not going to see any development anywhere until we get out to about 96 hours of GFS. Trying to develop something there well south of this established ridge in the Atlantic. It's been doing that off and on, the pop up, pop down, you never know. People criticize the GFS for that, it's not reliable. It's like, come on. I mean, at least if it shows it and there's a tropical wave that's the incipient, precursor, well, you can't blame it. It's trying to take that heat and bundle it and make something out of it. Boy, you can see a nice developed piece of energy over Africa here towards the end of the 5-day run. But look, this thing comes off, and by days 4 and 5, it tries to develop in the central Atlantic just a little bit. But we're getting into early July there, so the odds are this will be squashed by Saharan dust and dry air and so forth, and probably won't get to do much more than just be an interesting feature. So there it is, day 5, 4th of July is when this ends. See it right there? If I can draw on it. Maybe I can, maybe I can't. Try again. 4th of July, maybe a tiny little circulation in the middle of the Atlantic. We'll see. I wouldn't worry about it too much. And that's good, because we need some time to chill and get ready for what could be a very busy August and September. Hard to say with this time frame how far out we are, what the steering pattern would be like. But I'm telling you what, with all of that warm water compared to average in the Atlantic, and especially focused in the main development region, if we don't come out of this hurricane season with 8 or 9 hurricanes, I will be completely shocked. Where they end up is anybody's guess at this point, and that's the real important part, obviously. So let's enjoy this little bit of a lull while we have it. I know I will. Anyway, that's it from me for today and the next few days, with nothing brewing, nothing much to discuss. That's good. So I'll take the next few days and keep working on some behind-the-scenes stuff. If you're using our iOS app, Hurricane Impact, and yes, it's available for Android, but we haven't been able to update it in several years. Funding issues. We'll get to it, don't worry. But for our iOS people, and I am an iPhone guy, I just like it. That's all there is. I don't have any vested interest in Apple. I just love my iPhone and my iPad. And so the development of the iOS app seemed natural. That being said, we are getting ready to release a new update, and I think you're really going to like it, so be on the lookout for that if you use Hurricane Impact on your iOS device, all right? And really, for the Android folks out there, we haven't forgotten, but development is not free. So when we have the funding to infuse into the Android version, we certainly will. Anyway, that's it for me. Have a great rest of your Thursday afternoon and a great weekend as it gets here. I'll be back on the July 3rd, Monday, the day before Independence Day, probably in the morning, because we're going to have afternoon festivities and whatnot. But we'll see. Maybe I'll wait until the afternoon. I know I'm rambling here as I try to close out. The sea surface temperature anomalies charts don't come out until after 1 p.m. Eastern, so I may have to wait for that. But anyway, I digress, and I am out of here. Mark Sudduth, HurricaneTrack.com. Thanks for watching. We'll chat again on Monday.